What if one of Christianity's most famous apostles was once believed to be more than a disciple? What if some early Christians thought Thomas was the identical twin of Jesus, not only similar in appearance, but also connected to him through secret knowledge and spiritual power? Today, most people remember Thomas because he doubted the resurrection. In the Gospel of John, he refuses to believe Jesus has risen until he sees the wounds for himself. That moment gave the world the phrase "doubting Thomas." But in other early traditions, Thomas was remembered very differently. He was the disciple closest to Jesus, the keeper of hidden teachings and, in some writings, Jesus' own twin brother. To understand where this idea came from, it helps to begin with the family of Jesus. Historians generally accept that Jesus had brothers, and the best known was James. The Apostle Paul refers to meeting James, the Lord's brother, and describes him as a leading figure in the Jerusalem Christian community. The Jewish historian Josephus also mentions James and reports that he was executed. These references make James one of the clearest historical members of Jesus' family. The Gospel of Mark names other brothers, Joseph, Judas, and Simon, but says little about them. That silence left room for later Christians to speculate, expand their stories, and connect them to other traditions. Thomas became one of the most dramatic examples. The key lies in his name. Thomas comes from an Aramaic word meaning twin. The Gospel of John repeatedly calls him Thomas, also known as Didymus, and Didymus is the Greek word for twin. The text is effectively introducing a man called Twin, who was also called Twin. That raises an obvious question. Whose twin was he? The New Testament never says. For later Christians, especially those writing in Syria, that unanswered question became an invitation. Jesus had a brother named Judas, while some traditions called the apostle Judas Thomas. If the two figures were identified as the same person, and Thomas meant twin, then the conclusion followed that Judas Thomas was the twin of Jesus. Historically, there is no solid evidence that Jesus had a twin brother. The tradition appears to be the result of later interpretation rather than family memory. Still, it became important in several early Christian writings. The most famous is the Gospel of Thomas. Unlike the 4 New Testament Gospels, it does not narrate Jesus' life, crucifixion, or resurrection. Instead, it presents 114 sayings attributed to him. Some resemble teachings in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, others are mysterious and philosophical. Jesus appears more like a wandering sage revealing wisdom. The Gospel of Thomas never directly states that Thomas was Jesus' brother, yet it gives him a privileged position. In one scene, Jesus takes Thomas aside and tells him 3 secret words. When the other disciples ask what he heard, Thomas refuses to repeat it, warning that they would stone him. The moment suggests he has received knowledge too shocking or sacred for ordinary believers. A second text, the Acts of Thomas, goes much further. Written around the 3rd century, it tells the story of Thomas's missionary journey to India, a tradition still honored by ancient Christian communities in parts of southern India. In the Acts of Thomas, the apostle does not merely carry the title twin, he physically resembles Jesus. At one point, a bridegroom sees Jesus speaking with his bride and mistakes him for Thomas. Jesus explains that he is not Judas Thomas, but his brother. The scene presents Thomas as an earthly reflection of Christ. Another 3rd century work, the Book of Thomas the Contender, presents a private conversation between Jesus and Judas Thomas. Jesus addresses him as his twin and true companion, then urges him to examine himself and discover who he really is. Thomas's twinship becomes more than a claim about family. It becomes a symbol of inner transformation. These writings probably emerged from Syrian Christian communities where Thomas became far more important than in the New Testament. They also share a theme of secret knowledge. Thomas records hidden sayings, sees truths concealed from others, and receives the hidden word of Christ. Why would being Jesus' twin give Thomas access to secret wisdom? For these Christians, twinship was not only about biology, it represented spiritual likeness. Thomas looked like Jesus because he was becoming like Jesus. He understood him because he reflected him. The story of the twin became a model for what salvation could mean. This becomes clearer in some of the Gospel of Thomas's most difficult sayings. The text speaks about people seeing not only their visible likeness, but also images that existed before them. Behind this language is an ancient belief that human beings possessed a higher, heavenly identity before entering the physical world. The body was temporary, while the true self was a divine image connected to God. The idea drew on ancient Greek philosophy, which treated earthly life as a shadow of higher reality, and on biblical teaching that humanity was created in God's image. Some early Christians combined these ideas and concluded that salvation meant rediscovering the divine image within. The Gospel of Thomas repeatedly speaks about making divided things one: the inner and the outer, the above and the below, the male and the female. The language points toward restoration, a return to an original state before humanity became fragmented. In this view, the human problem is separation. People have become divided from God, from their true nature, and from themselves. Salvation comes when those divisions are healed. Thomas, as the twin of Jesus, becomes the perfect symbol of that process. He is human, yet resembles Christ. He is separate from Jesus, yet connected to him. He is not simply following Jesus from a distance, he is becoming his likeness. One saying captures the idea clearly: whoever receives the teaching of Jesus will become like him, and Jesus will become like that person. The believer does not merely admire Christ, but is transformed into his image. Some scholars describe this as salvation through twinning. Thomas is the first example, but he represents every believer. Just as Thomas becomes the earthly twin of the heavenly Christ, all Christians are invited to recover the divine image within themselves. The story suggests that every person has the potential to become spiritually like Jesus. This may also explain the mysterious 3 words Jesus privately speaks to Thomas. No one knows what they were. One theory is that the message was something like, "I am you." The other disciples might have considered such a claim blasphemous. Yet within the theology of the text, it makes sense. Jesus and Thomas mirror one another. The heavenly image and the earthly person become one. Over time, this version of Thomas faded from mainstream Christianity. The Gospel of John entered the Christian Bible and was regularly read in churches. The Gospel of Thomas, the Acts of Thomas, and the Book of Thomas remained outside the canon. As a result, doubting Thomas survived, while the wise twin who received hidden teachings slowly disappeared. Still, the forgotten tradition reveals how diverse early Christianity once was. Different communities remembered the same figure in very different ways. One group saw Thomas as a skeptic who needed proof. Another saw him as a missionary to India. Others imagined him as the spiritual double of Jesus and the guardian of mysteries. The belief that Thomas was literally Jesus' twin is not supported by reliable historical evidence. But the tradition matters because it shows how early Christians used story, symbolism, philosophy, and scripture to answer a larger question: what does it mean to become like Christ? For the Christians who honored Thomas, the answer was bold. Faith was not only about believing what Jesus said, it was about discovering the divine image within, healing the divisions of the self, and becoming so deeply united with Christ that the believer could be called his twin. Thomas, then, was more than the apostle who doubted. In one forgotten branch of Christian memory, he was the man who looked like Jesus, knew his secrets, and showed humanity what spiritual transformation might look like. Was Thomas really the twin of Jesus, or was it simply an early Christian legend? Tell us what you think in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.